Good afternoon. Welcome to our quick tips session. In this session, there will be 3 quick tips, each provided by a different member of our group who's been invited to speak. Each quick tip will last for 10 minutes and each will have a different subject. Unfortunately, there won't be any time for Q&A, but I'm sure this will be a highly entertaining session. I'll introduce each speaker at each juncture in the course of the event. So our first quick tip, the subject matter is security in the new normal. What are the key opportunities? And this is being presented by Ananth, who is president of NetSurion. Ananth is co-creator of NetSurion's managed SIM solution. He has 25 years in IT control and operations and has consulted for companies on compliance strategies, including audit policies and automated reporting processes. He's worked in product development for companies including Ciena, Westinghouse Wireless, and Equatorial Communications, and he's an acknowledged leading expert on IT compliance. Thank you, and welcome, Ananth.
Thank you, Tony. Good day, everyone. Why would you want to waste a good crisis? Never any reason to do that. And that's what we have, an opportunity for MSPs not just to survive, but to thrive in this new normal. What's new and what's normal about this? Well, the fact of the matter is that your customers are busy reinventing their business. What's changed, you say? Well, what's changed is that the workforce has become remote. What's changed is customers are coming online instead of in person. What's changed is that servers and applications that might have been on premise in the data center are now migrating to the cloud. And guess what? 2 out of these 3 are in your wheelhouse as an MSP. Now, change in our business happens slowly. Customers resist it. You know this. You've tried to sell them stuff, particularly in cybersecurity, and you've gotten stiff-armed. Not again. Did you not just show up last year saying that you had a new router, new antivirus, new endpoint protection? So change occurs typically because of one of 2 things. Either the business changes or the threat landscape changes. In this case, with COVID-19, you've got both. What do I mean by business changes? Well, typically it's something like the business is now subject to a new regulation like GDPR, PCI DSS, and the organization wants to comply. Or it could be as a result of a security incident and now they get religion. Or it can be because the board told them so. And the threat landscape changing, after all, we all click our seatbelts when we see a car crash. We slow down when the sign says speed limit 55, your speed 75. Otherwise, we're, merrily motoring down the highway. So the fact of the matter is these 3 changes are causing businesses to look to people like you because you have the skills. And you can now transition from being a provider of your utility, IT services, if you will, to becoming a full partner in the business, to rather than just simply thinking about being a requirements receiver, one who's told, I need to do this, I need to do that, to actually participating in how this thing's done. This, by the way, is affecting absolutely every industry, right? If you think about quick serve restaurants, they've moved to online ordering and curbside delivery. If you think about banks, now if you want to go in branch, you actually have to make an appointment. And it's not, you'd prefer to do check deposit, bill payment, all those routine things via online banking, right? If you think about medicine, if it is a routine visit, the doctor doesn't really want you to come into the clinic because that's where the sick people are. And you don't want to go to the emergency room unless it's really an emergency. So again, online and in your wheelhouse. Even the MVA and the DMV, not that anyone ever enjoys visiting those places, but there's even less now motivation to go there. If you're doing something routine like renewing a registration or a driver's license, you'll try your best to do it online. So this is affecting everyone. Now, this was frankly on a slow path and it was occurring anyway. What has COVID done? Well, COVID's accelerated the process. Customers were preferring digital anyway. Did you notice that you preferred chat on a provider's website rather than actually picking up the phone and getting into a queue? And of course, we all know the crazy growth that people like Amazon have had over brick and mortar. What's good about COVID-19 is that what would have taken months, maybe years for decision making is happening in days, if not weeks. One of the questions I get from time to time is, how do I position this to the customer? So I have this new toy. I'm an IT guy. I understood this really well, but I'm really struggling to make the case to, the dentist or the insurance agency or, to the savings and loan. Well, good news. COVID-19's done half of its job for you. They understand now very well that business is not as usual. Well, there are going to be some who say, why don't we just simply wait it out? Maybe business will go back to being the way it was in January this year, if you can remember that far back. Well, I've got news for you all. That is not happening. Think about employees. Now that they have a taste of what it's like to sit at home and commute instead of being on the 405, the 495 for an hour, they're not really anxious to come back. You're going to get a hybrid model where some of what you do is going to continue to be at home and some of it's going to be at work. In fact, 70% of employees said that they would consider what the telecommuting options were before they took a new job. So what's the opportunity then in this new normal? Well, the opportunity is to rethink endpoint security. Now that the device went home or went on the road, went remote with the employee, what are you doing for endpoint protection? What are you doing for maybe vulnerability scanning? Were you expecting that data leak protection happened because you were plugged into the office network? Well, you're not plugged into the office network, so what now? You also have an opportunity to think about policy, right? As work from home becomes standard, should you allow the teenager to work on the device that you took from the office back home? We used to think that the perimeter was really the firewall. In the new normal, the perimeter is really identity, who you are, regardless of where you came from. So you've got an opportunity now to think about things like multi-factor authentication, maybe identity and access management, and that old staple, login monitoring. You know that if you saw a login in San Francisco and then 15 minutes later the same person logged in New York, well, they're obviously sharing password. And if there is a security no-no in this business, that's one. So the other opportunity was migrating to the cloud. And I said it was occurring at a slow pace. Well, it's occurring much faster. How were you interacting with your office workers? Were you doing that via a file server that was back at the office and you would put it there on K: and they'd pick it up? Well, K: isn't K: anymore unless you're on the VPN. And you don't want a VPN from there to your office because that's not going to be able to compete with what you have in the cloud. So that application is moving up to the cloud. Of course, you had an entire session on Office 365. So I won't even go there. But think about the virtual desktop. I mean, your desktop was physical. It's going to become virtual. Have you heard of desktop as a service? Well, that's something that is going to show up, right? So the opportunity, if you will, in this new normal is in three areas. One is triage. People are absolutely anxious, were anxious for business continuity. Can you help me get back up and running really quick? Right? Security teams are all busy with trying to see if we can plug those gaps and allow the business to actually continue forward. And then businesses are worried about, training gaps. How do you onboard someone that's local, that's remote? How do you lead a virtual all hands meeting and things of that nature? Now, digital hygiene, such as patching, the problem didn't go away. You're still just as vulnerable as you always were. And of course, updating mobile apps because they've become such a thing. We know people that have left desktops and move to the iPad OS and things of that sort. The second area is to fix and clean up. We moved in such a hurry during the triage period that we just accepted new risks without really being able to give much thought because we were so focused on business continuity. Now, as you become accustomed to these changes, you're going to have to evaluate these residual risks and tighten controls. Once again, opportunity for you. And then, of course, internalizing those changes because this is not something that's going to go away. By the way, does this mean that you have to be an expert in all these areas? Not hardly. This is an as-a-service economy. And so you have service providers, two service providers such as yourself. What you should own is the relationship with the customer and the deep understanding of their business. Now, the COVID has been the great disruptor. The deep adoption of internet for both personal and business lives. You've got the skills that businesses need and are now looking for to help them transition. As they reimagine their processes, you want to be there, no longer being a barrier to growth, but as a strategic partner in technology and business decision making. Tony, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Anand. That's 10 on the nose. That's perfect. Thank you. So our second quick tip is the subject matter is maintaining and monitoring customer satisfaction in a remote working environment. For this subject, we have Carolyn Groh, who is the COO and co-founder of Law Toolbox. Law Toolbox is an award-winning legal SaaS provider that transforms Teams, Outlook, and SharePoint into a collaboration suite for lawyers. Prior to joining Law Toolbox in 2001, Carolyn worked at IBM in Tokyo and Singapore, managing Asia Pacific distribution, and started her career in Tokyo as the first Western hire at Show Aluminum, or Aluminium, in Tokyo, Japan. Law Toolbox is a 20-year-old legal calendaring and matter management software that integrates with a number of different platforms. And when COVID hit in March, Law Toolbox added virtual meetings for virtual court and hearings. So, without further ado, Carolyn, over to you.
Thank you for that introduction. So, I am talking to you today about taking care of your clients, and you're monitoring their customer satisfaction with the business that you're providing to them, your services as an MSP in this world of COVID and remote work. So I have 5 must-dos that I'll talk you through. So it all starts first with take care of your team first. So you need to look internal, I think, to figure out how to navigate COVID. And if you start with your own team, you can really set the stage for what to do with your customers. Culture is everything in this world. And I believe one important step here is creating an inclusive, connected environment by getting your camera on. Turning your camera on every single time you talk to your internal team. And if you see somebody who hasn't turned their camera on, you set the stage and ask them to get that camera on. Because once you get your team, and I mean, who's comfortable putting their camera on all the time? At home, messy house, whatever it is. If you can get your team to get their camera on, they're going to be able to help your customers and connect with your customers in a completely different way, because they will be leading your customers into getting their cameras on and connecting with you. Tough times are opportunities to pull people together. And it's not just about the morning huddle and the afternoon huddles that you as a business leader create with your team. It's a lot more about all day long, throughout the day, constantly connected, face-to-face on screen, through IM chat, just working together in a way that you feel as though it was like what was happening when you were back at the office. And inspiring your team to understand that this is an opportunity to overcome distance using what we all do best in this world of MSPs, which is technology. Of course, make time to have fun, cooking online together, small groups in a backyard, heat lamps, whatever it takes. You need to find time for that piece. Once you've taken care of your team, then your next step is to create your customer outreach task force. And I know all of you have already started down this process. We're well into COVID, but this is a long journey that we're all going on. And I've chosen the word task force and outreach from a different vantage point than we typically think of. It's more that disaster moment, that crisis moment where, you're building a war room together to solve a big problem. And it should be made up of not just your customer support team or your customer care team. I'm talking your CEO, your COO, your marketing team, your sales team. They're all participating. And the whole point is to let your customers know that you are in this battle with them together, that we're all in it together and we'll make it through together by figuring out what we need to work on and what are the most important things. It might involve helping your clients get a less expensive plan with you if that's what they need. It's about asking your clients, how are you? How is your company? How is your industry? And what can we do better to help? Mission and character and company culture define both how you and your customers are going to make it through and weather the storm. Number 3, it's all about prioritizing your customer needs. So it might sound harsh, but you need to start by ranking who needs your help first. In it together means a plan of attack together. It means a joint plan with your customers to figure out how to get the most critical work done first. In the world of IT and supporting your customers, as MSPs, you're all getting overwhelmed with people that need help, and providing it remotely is a whole new battle plan for you. It means doing things differently than you did before. Maybe it means sharing office hours. Perhaps it's scheduling standing meetings, even if it's very short periods. It's always going to depend on which customer. It's getting new creative communication patterns in place, and it's also about being generous and forgiving in everything you are doing with your customers, and really understanding that everybody on both sides is struggling in this moment. Number 4, you need to monitor your clients in a different way than you used to. It's a different ballgame, and perhaps your biggest red flag is going to be monitoring their payment, which might sound harsh, but people that aren't paying are probably the people that need you the most. And reaching out with tenacity when you're trying to get a hold of those folks. It's not about, just sending an email and placing a phone call to their main number, because, perhaps people aren't as effective at following up on those types of calls. So be tenacious and be persistent, and don't be afraid to use their cell phone and dial through on the main number and just get through to them one way or another. So monitoring your clients is a whole different scenario in this world, and thinking that through with the team and making sure that you're persistent, I think, is the key. Digital transformation now is not just an opportunity that comes around, it comes around every several years. This is once in a 20, 30, 50-year moment in our world. It's a chance for technology companies, MSPs, to define your legacy. We've all seen digital transformation. Everybody talks about what we would normally have expected to see in 4 months has what we would normally expect to see happen in 10 years has occurred over the course of the last 4 months. Be the example in your industry, pave the way, and set an example, not just for your industry, not just for your team, but for your customers, because that's how they grow and change, is by watching their IT folks and seeing how they manage some of this remote work. So here's a quick story about something that we've been doing internally. So we just hired a bunch of people, and I'll be the first to say I feel guilty saying that in times of crisis. Yes, we're growing, and the challenge is bringing a bunch of new people up to speed when they're all remote. And so we came up with this idea. If any of you happen to use Microsoft Teams, we created the idea of a virtual conference room where everybody could see who was in it whenever they wanted to go join in on the conversation, especially for the new folks. And so if you use Teams, setting a channel in setting a place for people to meet within a channel lights up a video camera, so that when people end a meeting early and they wanted to connect with folks and talk about a new idea or how to demo this or that, they can pop into the channel, and it's like having the light on and a door open. Now is not the time to sit back, but it's the time to work harder than ever. It's the time to be amazing. In our company, one more personal story I'll share. We shifted a little bit. You heard a little bit of the background. We're an ISV, developed our product 20 years ago as a born in the cloud, but built to Office 365 7 years ago, and 3.5 years ago built into Microsoft Teams. When COVID hit, we looked at our customers and we looked at who needed us the most and who was struggling the most and what was causing this. And the biggest blocker was that the courts have been closed. The courts don't have an easy way to securely host virtual court. So we looked at our skills and what we could do in the industry, and we decided we can pull this off. We can create virtual court with just one tiny additional feature, virtual meetings. So we enabled breakout rooms through Microsoft Teams back in April. And many of you might have heard that at the Ignite conference for Microsoft that they are announcing new dynamic automated breakout rooms, and we are excited to have demoed that last month. So this was an opportunity for us to look at our customers, look at what we could do to help them, and look at how we could help not just our industry in the courts, but help get business back up and running in the U.S. and across the globe. So we took some educated risks, and honestly speaking, most of the people in the industry at the courts, Microsoft, were thrilled to see what we were doing. Some of them thought, wow, this company is investing all of this with virtual meetings and breakout rooms. Well, Microsoft's going to potentially be launching their own, and then La Toolbox will have created this short-term, bridge. But the reality is, when we enabled the application to leverage the recent and the upcoming Microsoft breakout rooms, the doors just flooded open. So I grew up, my career started in Japan. I spent 7 years there, and I always go back. I think about it constantly, and I remember 25 years ago when I started there, I always thought about the word crisis. And as you know, Japanese words come from China, the written characters, and they're typically made up of 2 pictographs. And the word for crisis is made of the picture first for disaster, and then the second half of the word is opportunity. This is certainly an opportunity for everybody to lean forward and make change and make big leaps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Our third quick tip is entitled Free Up Those Major On-Hold Projects. I'm sure we've got lots of those, all of us. This one is presented by Manny Lardis, co-founder and VP of Sales at Dizion. Manny is proficient in selling complex managed services and has been doing so for over 20 years. He was the first salesperson at Via West that grew to a major data center provider, and he enjoys world soccer and playing the mandolin, although I'm guessing probably not at the same time. That's a bad gag, but you knew I was going to say it. Welcome, Manny. I will hand over to you. Can you hear me, Manny? No?
We don't hear you.
I will reboot.
We don't hear Manny. I hear you, Tony.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah,
Manny,
we just don't hear Manny.
Manny, are you on mute? Can our control center help Manny out? Behind the scenes?
I think he was telling us that he couldn't hear us.
Oh, then I would probably suggest, if you can't hear us, that doesn't help, but maybe someone from BAPTI in the back office can email him to suggest, there we go, to suggest he reboots or logs back in again. I was surprised he didn't laugh at my joke, so I'm guessing that's why he didn't actually.
How about now?
I thought it was a good one.
How about now?
Hi, Manny.
You're good.
We're good. All right.
Introduction, or are you good to go?
No, I got the introduction. Sorry about that. I was.
No.
I was just cracking a joke. I said I love world soccer, but these days I love hanging out in my basement. It feels like.
I hear you.
But yeah, thanks, Caroline and Anantha. Really great topics. We're all about video as well, so appreciate that. And Anant, it's funny you said DAS is coming, and that's what we do. We've been a DAS provider for about a decade, and focusing on work-at-home programs. And who would have thunk that over the past 6 months, everyone's been turned into a work-at-home expert. So we've seen it from both sides. And today I'm not saying I have the answers. I think we all struggle with how do we free up those major on-hold projects, because we were, cranking beginning of the year, working through budget, working through all the process, and all of a sudden, what just happened? Where did everybody go? But I think what the way we look at it is we've always looked at it, we're selling desktop as a service. So we're creating a deal versus it's far from a commodity. So it's not like, here's the budget, I got to spend it. We're always, building the opportunities for our company. But I'll walk through a couple points. But I think, you hear the term, business pain, and a lot of times in sales and in managed services, it's kind of an overused term. But I think I've never seen more pain from businesses as we've seen over the past 6 months. And one of the things that I would really tell you is what you thought the pain was that you were working towards, and working towards that sale, it is completely flipped on its head. So when you're thinking about it, really need to put yourself in the customer's shoes. We do a lot in call centers, a lot in healthcare, and what we were working on the solution, a couple of emails, hey, we're still here, we ready, no response. Until we started thinking differently. What is the problem that they're dealing with? And I could list a whole bunch of different verticals. It could be a law firm, it could be retail, it could be healthcare. Everybody has different challenges. So my number one piece and takeaway would be what you thought the problem was and what you're selling. You got to start this process over again. And this is not just that individual or department level. This is now exec and board level problems for every business. So a couple things I'll kind of walk through. When we look at an opportunity, and again, put COVID aside, we really look through 5 different things. One is the business pain, the timeline, the business case. We got to have a coach, and I'll get into a little bit about that, and then the competition. But when we look into business pain, again, being a DAS company, we were always solving that, work at home or remote use case. But all of a sudden now everyone is a remote use case for us. And we had one specific, customer where, we were trying to sell them desktops and then they went dark. But when we finally got into the conversation, it was less around just the compliance and the security side of it, but it was really around the user experience, the performance, the way that their VPNs were set up. It just wasn't working and people were leaving, people were quitting. So the problem wasn't what we thought it was. The problem was really retention of the employees, attendance. Those are the things that move the needle, the human side of it, versus just, shoving desktops and trying to get a sale complete. When we look at we got to look at a timeline, right? Sure, in sales, you're saying, we got to go do that upgrade or got to do that refresh, and every customer wants to kick the can down the road as far as they can. But I think once you identify that business pain, for example, that customer around the retention or people, quitting or, not logging in and not doing the work, really need to back them into what is that timeline, and understand that, because we're all in our busy season, and it's the way you position it too, right? We're about to get into Q4 where a lot of our customers are doing ramps. I know you want to get this up and running by Thanksgiving, but to get that sale moving, you need to really, back them into that date. The stuff that worked in the past, I'm going to waive this install, I'm going to give you this free month, it doesn't work. It's got to be driven by the business pain and tying a timeline back to it. I think, Carolyn, you said it really well, the word digital transformation. It's always been a crazy buzzword. We talk about it almost like we always talked about what if there was a pandemic? How would you plan for it? Never was a reality, and now digital transformation. So the one thing that we're seeing is we run a desktop as a service, right? So you think about the world of real estate, you think about the world of access to anywhere. We're hiring. We used to hire just folks in Colorado. Now we're hiring people globally, and so is every company that is growing. So really take this opportunity to, instead of just saying, I sell this widget, I sell this tool, and it's a point solution, take that step back and help that company go through a digital transformation. We have one customer, I'll give you an example. I can't use their name, but they're a steak company out of Omaha. And they went through they've all used our technology for their work at home call centers, but they had call centers in center, and really understanding when they sent everybody to home, it wasn't just, hey, I want to go sell you more desktops. It was understanding their whole model and realize that those 300 people that were in center are going to stay home. And we could support a bring your own device. So we help them with the business case. And we have a cost benefit analysis. And I bet a lot of you guys in the audience do this, but helping the customer, instead of just going, I'm going to sell you this, 300 desktops, it's, I'm going to sell you these 300 desktops, but let's talk about your real estate. Let's talk about how you could put people at home anywhere, and started building that business case. So when the CIO presented to the CFO, it made sense. And we took that opportunity, instead of just having a small sale, take that step back and help them completely transform their business. The coach, we were talking about this, and, having been in sales my whole career, and, a lot of you as well, this is the most important time to have somebody, on the inside, really. If you were working previous to COVID and you got to build those relationships with those customers, and you have that person inside that could always tell you what's going on, who's who in the zoo, how the pain really going on in the business, it's the most important right now to have that. And I'll tell you, a coach and a champion are two different things. A champion is someone who, will take your proposal, move it to the top, wants the sale. A coach is someone who's going to, frankly, just tell you a lot of information that you're going to need to help get the deal across the line. And it's something that you have to be purposeful. It will come natural, but it could be relationship driven. It could be somebody that needs this solution and are willing to go through the process and provide the information to help you. Hey, here are the competitors. Here's what we're up against. Here's the decision maker. Focus a lot of time on that coach, and you really have to be purposeful, whether that's doing a virtual lunch, doing a virtual happy hour, sending little things, but building that relationship and identify that person that's going to help you, get that across the line. We had a recent example also, because you got to build trust, and I think we've noticed. I mean, we're all relationship folks. Building relationships over Zoom is interesting and difficult to do. So that opportunity to connect the dots, identify that coach through common customers, common connections, using LinkedIn to say, we worked with this company in the past and now we're working with this company. Let's build that trust. And then we did this recently with a customer where we built this trust and bridged it over to the VP of sales of this large call center customer. Wasn't the decision maker, wasn't the CIO, but it was the person that helped us understood all the challenges and all the flaws in their current environment, compliance challenges, security challenges, and armed us to go get that deal across the line, and really, owe a lot to come from that referral. And then the last thing I would say, you really have to ask yourself, what is the competition? And the competition is not, if we're a VDI or DaaS company, it's not necessarily just other DaaS companies. It's what are the other things that they could do to solve this problem, right? It could be duct tape, it could be, chicken wire, but you got to think about it and ask those difficult questions, because you can easily go, I'm going to compete against my competitors, but you got to ask those questions. What else would you be considering? What else would you be thinking about that could be lower cost and faster to stand up during this time of need? So making sure you're asking those questions. So just in summary, the two things that I would focus on mostly would be identifying that business pain and what's costing the business the money. And then the last thing would be investing into the coach, because that's the best way during this virtual world is to help move a deal along. Thanks, and back to you guys.
Thank you very much, Manny. Thank you all three, Ananth, Carolyn, and Manny. Great insights, most welcome, and bang on the money in terms of time. So that's awesome news. In fact, possibly even slightly early. So thank you for attending, everybody that was here. I hope you've enjoyed these sessions. I'm sure you'll be delighted to hear that Ananth is now going to be running a workshop to dig deeper into helping you understand how you can take advantage of all the security opportunities. But this is a workshop, and with everybody on the camera. So our technology limits us to the first 16 people that enter the room, which is one of the tiles on your left-hand side, the next tile, in fact. So if you'd like to join, please click on the link on the left, and you will be hopefully one of the first 16 that submitted. For the rest of you, if you're not able to do that, there is now a 30-minute coffee break, virtual coffee break, of course, and a networking opportunity. And then at Pacific time 3:10, we'll be back with panel 3. So thanks again to the three of you. Great insights, and most welcome. And enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you.